are your ho-hi announcements for Monday, October 26th.
1990 looked like the year television finally outgrew the couch. Networks were swinging for the fences with glossy reboots, movie-to-TV conversions, and high-concept experiments that promised to reinvent primetime. You could feel the swagger in the promos, big producers, bigger budgets, and the confidence that the right hook could turn any Tuesday night into event television. It was an era hungry for the next must-see thing, something louder than the competition, bolder than last season, and polished enough to draw in curious channel surfers on the spot. But somewhere between the hype machines and the living room reality, the audience didn't follow. Concepts that dazzled in a pitch meeting buckled under weekly schedules. Nostalgia that looked bulletproof on paper fractured when the tone shifted. Even superhero suits and blockbuster pedigree couldn't guarantee that viewers would return after the pilot glow wore off. That disconnect between what networks promised and what viewers actually wanted turned 1990 into a surprisingly rich year for spectacular misfires. Tonight, we're counting down 10 of the biggest TV flops of 1990, and we're doing it the way the promos didn't, by putting hype and reality side by side. From musical cops to grown-up Brady drama, from John Hughes classics turned middling sitcoms to a crimson-suited speedster outrun by scheduling. These are the swings that didn't quite connect, and what we can learn from each one. If you love deep-cut TV history and behind-the-scenes autopsies like this, hit like, smash subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss our next retro TV rabbit hole. 10. Cop Rock, MTV meets NYPD. Stephen Bacchico, the mind behind Hill Street Blues and LA Law, attempts to fuse prestige police drama with full-blown musical numbers. Imagine the gritty streets of a crime procedural, where suspects confess in harmony and judges deliver verdicts in verse. Promos leaned into audacity. If anyone could stretch the medium, it was Bacchico. Reality. Audiences weren't sure how to watch it. The tonal gear shifts from tense interrogations to stage-lit choruses created narrative whiplash. Music can elevate emotion, but it also asks viewers to suspend disbelief. On a weekly cop show, that suspension snapped. Critics were split between admiration for the ambition and bewilderment at the execution. Sampling was decent, retention cratered. By mid-season, the spectacle that was supposed to hook everyone was pushing them away. Why it flopped? The concept was too hard to explain in 10 seconds, and too strange to normalize across 22 episodes. Musical set pieces need momentum and buy-in. Case of the week storytelling blunts both. It didn't help that songs had to do double duty, advance plot and stand as entertainment, which left some numbers feeling dutiful instead of delightful. Aftermath cop rock became a cautionary legend and later a cult fascination. One of those you have to see it to believe it artifacts that pop culture students pass around with a grin. The lesson isn't don't experiment, it's teach the audience how to watch you. If cop rock couldn't, what hope did a serious reboot of a sunny classic have? 9. The Bradys' gritty reboot of a sunny classic. Take America's most wholesome family and follow them into adulthood, serialized, real, and ready to tackle grown-up problems. The Brady Bunch brand had cultural weight. The 1980s had already proven that nostalgia sells. The pitch: update the Sherwood-Schwartz universe for a post-sitcom world, broaden the emotional palette, and ride Friday nights to comfort food ratings. Reality: fans didn't want realism from the Bradys. They wanted cozy ritual. Switching from laugh-track warmth to soapy dramatic arcs created brand tone whiplash. Viewers who tuned in for retro comfort found marital strain and career tumult. Casual audiences who might have liked domestic drama didn't feel like they needed this family to deliver it. The serialized structure also punished irregular viewers. Miss an episode, miss context, miss the point. Why it flopped? Legacy IP thrives on a clear promise. Change that promise too much and you lose loyalists without replacing them. The Bradys couldn't bridge the gap between fan expectations and the new format. Instead of deepening the icon, it felt like an entirely different show wearing a familiar smile. Aftermath. The franchise roared back later, ironically by leaning into meta-comedy in the 90s films that celebrated the original tone instead of rewriting it. The lesson: when nostalgia is your superpower, reconciling tone is the whole job. Speaking of tone, adapting a perfect teen movie vibe also proved deadly difficult in 1990. 8. Ferris Bueller. From big screen legend to small screen shrug. Ferris is the patron saint of teen rebellion. Turn that charisma into 22 episodes, and you've got an evergreen high school comedy machine. NBC pushed the irreverence, winks to camera, and fourth wall charm. The pedigree from the John Hughes film suggested a built-in audience. What could go wrong? Reality. Television magnifies what movies obscure. On the small screen, you live with a character weekly. The wrong casting energy or tonal balance gets louder with each episode. The show fought two shadows: Matthew Broderick's definitive Ferris and the film's near-mythic Cool. Without Broderick, viewers constantly measured TV Ferris against movie Ferris. Add in school sitcom plotting that didn't have the film's cinematic sheen or John Hughes' exact calibration, and the magic thinned. Why it flopped? Replicating Ferris Bueller's Day Off required alchemy, the right lead, the right rhythm, the right visual bravado. The series often felt like an impression of Ferris rather than Ferris himself, and network TV's constraints dulled the gentle anarchy that made the film sing. Meanwhile, Fox's Parker Lewis Can't Lose captured that heightened, cartoony smart-aleck vibe without living in Ferris's shadow, making the comparison even harsher. Aftermath. The failure didn't kill the movie-to-series pipeline, but it did remind networks that Vibe isn't a plug-and-play module. If perfectly cast movie icon was a trap here, another John Hughes favorite was about to hit the same snare. 7. Uncle Buck. Another Hughes favorite, another miss. Uncle Buck had family appeal and a recognizable name. On television, you could imagine a feel-good weekly setup. Rough around the edges Guardian plus kids equals heart and hijinks. CBS leaned into broad comedic energy and warm, fuzzy marketing. With the right rhythm, it could have been a comfortable anchor. Reality. What John Candy brought to the film. His specific warmth, timing, and gentle chaos doesn't transfer automatically. The series had to invent its own Buck while also living in Candy's giant shadow. Jokes needed to be both safe enough for network comfort and spiky enough to feel like Buck. The result often landed in the mushy middle. Pleasant but forgettable, jokey without memorable punchlines, and never essential. Why it flopped? Film charisma is concentrated. TV charisma must be renewable. Without a distinctive comedic voice to replace Candy's signature presence, episodes blurred together. Viewers sampled for the IP and drifted when the series couldn't consistently surprise or deepen the premise. Aftermath. The Remember the Movie strategy kept tempting programmers for years, but 1990 proved the conversion requires more than title recognition. With cinematic nostalgia faltering, networks tried a different flavor of ambition, blend music and high school cool. Which brings us to a stylish experiment that arrived 2 decades before its time. 6. Hull High. Musical teen dramedy before Glee. A camera-slick, choreography-heavy, music-infused teen series with attitude part high school drama, part performance art. The idea was catnip, youthful energy, hot tracks, and the promise of something visually distinct from standard hallway hijinks. If you could lure MTV-era teens into a primetime story, you might mint a new format. Reality. Audiences didn't know where to put it. Hull High swung between earnest drama and stylized interludes, but weekly scheduling and promo windows struggled to communicate the show's how. For music to be a narrative engine, songs need to feel inevitable, like an emotion overflowing. Too often they felt like interruptions or concept markers. Combine that with an already crowded teen landscape and the series struggled to get sampled and to keep the viewers who did show up. Why it flopped? Being ahead of your time is indistinguishable from being wrong for now. The marketing language for Hull High had to thread a needle between cool and coherent. It didn't. And teen shows rely on breakout characters who become appointment TV. The series never birthed that singular must-watch personality. Aftermath. When Glee hit 20 years later, it solved the clarity problem with an instantly legible premise and pop song familiarity. Hull High walks so others can sing. Next up, another 1990 swing that critics liked on paper but the masses never fully embraced. 5. Grand. Big ensemble, bigger expectations. A sprawling, satirical ensemble that wanted to map the American experience through intersecting families, romances, and class tensions. Prestige cast, clever writing, and a tone that hovered between wry comedy and serio-comic soap. The big canvas pitch promised sophistication. Think 30-something wit meets Dallas scope, all under a quirky lens. Reality. Audiences sampling a new show want either a simple weekly promise or a character they can't bear to miss. Grand offered both and neither. Its interlocking arcs made casual viewing tough. Miss an episode and you lose threads. Its tonal balance too thoughtful for pure sitcom, too ironic for pure drama, kept it in a middle lane where laugh seekers felt underfed and soap seekers felt underheated. Add production complexity and cost, and the margins got thin fast. Why it flopped? Setirization before DVRs is an unforgiving game. Without a cultural focal point, keeping viewers through schedule shuffles is brutal. Grand played like a refined novel, Broadcast primetime in 1990 rewarded punchier hooks. Aftermath. The show retains a pocket of cult admiration, the "oh, that was smart" nod that comes years later. But 1990 wasn't kind to noble experiments that couldn't telegraph their delights in under a minute. Networks pivoted back to star vehicles. Surely a known face could anchor a simpler half-hour, right? 4. Sydney. Star power can't save a soft premise. Valerie Bertinelli returns to primetime with a breezy, case-adjacent workplace premise and a young Matthew Perry in early career mode. CBS poured on the promotion. A likable lead, a light tone, and an accessible weekly setup. This is the kind of show that's supposed to glide at 8 p.m. Reality. Charming stars need a sharp engine. Sydney delivered amiable situations but few must-return hooks. The jokes were serviceable rather than sparkling. Characters felt familiar without becoming unforgettable. Where a breakout bit or catchphrase can alchemize comfort into habit, Sydney never found its signature. Ratings followed the content, curious at first, then quietly lower. Why it flopped? The premise lacked a grabby why now, and the writing didn't compensate with comic voltage. Star power gets you sampled. Only a distinctive comedic voice earns week-to-week loyalty. Aftermath. Matthew Perry's trajectory would explode later with Friends, proof that the raw ingredients were never the issue. But in 1990, Pleasant was a crowded lane. If star vehicles weren't bulletproof, perhaps a prestige brand could do the trick. Enter a beloved family dramedy before the timing was right. 3. Parenthood. Prestige idea, wrong timing. Ron Howard's film becomes a series, an obvious layup. Multiple families, overlapping generations, and a warm, lived-in tone. The premise is durable and universal. Marriage, kids, identity, all with a gentle glow. With the right cast and writer's room, you've got years of story. Reality. Translating film texture to episodic cadence is tricky. The 1990 version wrestled with tone, earnest without sharp specificity, ensemble without standout anchors, and serialized enough to deter drop-ins. Casting turnover and behind-the-scenes recalibration signaled that the show was still finding its voice as viewers drifted. It felt like a proof of concept more than a fully inhabited world. Why it flopped? Timing and identity. Parenthood needed the cable-era patience and DVR habits of the 2010s, the space to breathe, to let small moments accumulate, to reward steady viewers. In 1990, broadcast wanted cleaner premises and clearer weekly engines. The result was a show that audiences respected in theory but didn't commit to in practice. Aftermath. 2 decades later, Parenthood returned and thrived, validating the core concept and proving that some ideas are format right but era wrong. Of course, not every 1990 swing was gentle drama. One came caped, crimson, and very expensive. 2. The Flash. Big budget, bigger headwinds. A DC superhero with a cinema-grade suit, moody cityscapes, and action sequences that promised movie thrills on a weeknight. For comic fans, this was a dream, a serious, lavish take on a character who deserved the spotlight. The marketing leaned into scale. This was not a kiddie show, it was an event. Reality. Event budgets demand event audiences. The Flash faced time slot turbulence and a broadcast landscape not yet calibrated for serialized comic book storytelling. It delivered spectacle, but retention faltered as episodes seesawed between Monster of the Week and mythology without the streaming-era glue that later superhero TV would rely on. Add the cost of production and the margin for mediocre ratings shrank to nothing. Why it flopped? Misalignment between ambition and infrastructure. Without consistent scheduling, strong lead-ins, and a fan ecosystem to mobilize weekly, even a handsome, well-mounted superhero show can look like an indulgence on a ledger. The character was fine. The platform wasn't ready. Aftermath. The CW's The Flash. Decades later proved the appetite was real once network strategy, serialized storytelling norms, and fandom culture matured. In 1990, though, the Scarlet Speedster couldn't outrun a blunt equation. Big budget plus wobbly ratings, short run. And speaking of odd equations, our final entry found critical admiration but chased away the middle-of-the-road viewer entirely. 1. Get a Life. Weird, bold, and niche. Chris Elliott, cult comedy prince, gets a primetime playground. Fox wanted edge, something that said, "We're not the other networks." The show's anti-sitcom DNA, surreal plots, man-child protagonist, aggressively strange tonal left turns, promised originality, and the kind of buzz that forges diehards. Reality. The diehards came, but mainstream viewers did not. Affiliates balked at some content. Casual audiences bounced off the abrasive absurdism. Where most sitcoms court identification, Get a Life often courted discomfort on purpose. That's an artistic choice, and it can be brilliant, but it's also a rating risk when your lead character is built to repel conventional sympathy. Why it flopped. Television comedy still lived on mass appeal and water cooler lines. Elliot's sensibility was ahead of the curve that would later nourish cult darlings across cable and streaming. In 1990, it read as too much for 8 p.m. and too weird for 9 p.m. Aftermath. Revered now as an influence on alt comedy, Get a Life didn't find its era on first airing. And that's the subtext of 1990s flops. Plenty of creativity, plenty of nerves mismatched with the audience's weekly habits. Which brings us full circle. Conclusion. If you only skim the titles, 1990 looks reckless. A musical cop show, a solemn Brady reboot, 2 John Hughes conversions, a proto-Glee, a sprawling satire, a star vehicle without a spark, a prestige family dramedy out of phase, a blockbuster superhero lost to scheduling, and a defiantly weird anti-sitcom. But dig a little deeper and you see an industry trying to solve the same problem 10 different ways. How to make television feel bigger, bolder, glossier, more now, without breaking the weekly spell that keeps audiences returning. The lesson isn't don't swing. It's promise, clearly, deliver consistently. High concept is a door. Tone is the room. If your preview makes one promise and your premiere delivers another, sampling turns into shrugging. If your format requires a new viewing habit, you have to teach that habit gently. And if nostalgia is your engine, you have to protect the flavor that made us care in the first place. In other words, hype can light the fuse, but only fit keeps the rocket in the air. If you enjoyed this trip through TV's best-worst year, drop a like, subscribe for more deep dives, and tell us in the comments which early 90s swing we should autopsy next. Your pick might headline the next episode.